Today we are going to see a completely a new layout called Constraint Layout in Android. So before going into the demo, so we would like to check out some introduction about this particular Constraint Layout. This layout is completely a new layout and is available only in Android Studio 2.2 and above versions. So you cannot use this particular layout in either Eclipse or Android Studio below versions, that is 2.2 and below versions. This layout allows you to create large and complex layouts. So I can create any complex layout using this particular constraint layout. This is somewhat similar to relative layout, but it is more flexible than relative layout. So relative layout is considered to be one of the complex layout considered to the compared to the other layouts. So, so here it is somewhat similar to relative layout, but it is more flexible than relative layout. Means you can build your UI with constraint layout entirely by dragging and dropping the controls instead of coding it in the XML. So what is the main use of introduction of this particular constraint layout? So you can create responsive UI, that is an UI that is compatible with all the Android device screens. Okay, so it is somewhat similar to the attributes which we have used earlier. So before the introduction of this particular constraint layout, we would be using these two attributes, the wrap content and match parent, to create a responsive UI that would be compatible for all the Android screens. Okay. So sometimes there is some disadvantages while using those attributes for different screens. When I use this particular wrap content and match parent, I cannot say that it would be compatible for all the Android device screens. So to overcome that, the Google has somewhat uh, introduced. So the Google has introduced this particular constraint layout to create a responsive UI that would be compatible for all the Android device screens. This layout is similar to auto layout in iOS app development. So where the controls are placed in the controllers with some constraints defined. So what does this controllers mean? So just like the layouts in Android, in iOS app development, all the controls will be placed in some controllers. So Android we term it as layout. In iOS app development, the term would be controllers. Okay. The similar thing is implemented here in Android. So just like the auto layout in iOS app development, something similar, very similar to that particular auto layout is developed in Android, which is named as constraint layout. That can be used for different screen sizes. To use this constraint layout, you must download the constraint layout under solver for constraint layout from the SDK. So before it is actually a type of library things, library functions. So it should be downloaded from the SDK before using it. Okay. So after downloading the constraint layout and the solver for constraint layout from the SDK, you have to add the dependencies to use the constraint layout. So you have to add the dependencies in the gradle.build file. So it would be somewhat similar to like this. So there may be different versions. So at present I have marked it as 1.0.0 alpha version. Okay. So before going for the demo, we should check out some terms that is used in this layout. So which would be used often while designing an UI. The first one would be constraints. The second one would be types of handles. So we do have different type of handles for each controls. So what are they? Recess handle, baseline handle, and the side handle. So let us just check it out. What are with the so what this look like in a picture. So the first one would be handles. So actually this is a blueprint view of a control, that is the text view control. So what is a blueprint view? As far as up to date, so we do have only design view in the XML file. So design view in the sense where you can place controls in the design view, edit some code in the XML or change the properties in the property editor window. So this is somewhat newer. You would be having a blueprint view next to this particular design view. So when we go to the demo, you would be understanding it clearly. Okay, so this is the blueprint view of text view 1. Okay, resize handle. So what is the resize handle in this particular text view 1? So you can see the 4 squares in the corner of the text view. So that is referred to as resize handle. This resize handle is used to resize that particular control to any dimensions. So I can increase the width and height using this particular resize handle. The next one would be side handle. So you are seeing a round shaped thing in all the sides, that is at the top, bottom, and left and right. So that thing is referred to as side handle. So I would be using this particular side handle to connect the to create the constraints using this particular side handle. Okay. So what is constraints? We will be seeing it that the next part. The third handle is baseline handle. So I hope you are seeing this particular line inside the text view. That's a line with a oversight thing. So actually this thing. So this is a baseline handle. This baseline handle is used to create the baseline alignment for controls. So I would be dragging it, the constraint from this baseline handle to another another control baseline handle. So to make it both align in the same line. So one important note is that I can use this baseline handle only with the connection of another baseline handle. I cannot drag a constraint from this particular baseline handle to any other side handle. Okay. So constraints. What are constraints? Constraints are anchors that are drawn from the side handle of one control to the other. So something like this. As you see in the picture, there are two buttons. I'm dragging the constraint I'm dragging the anchor from button 2 left side handle to button 1 right side handle to create a constraint with the size 56 dp. So this is what we call it as constraint. Once the anchor is set, the constraints for this particular two buttons are set with the size of 56 dp. The spaces between these two controls would always be this 56 dp. Okay. Um, Another important note while creating this constraint is you cannot drag the side handle of one particular control to different axes. That means you cannot drag, you cannot create a constraint by dragging. So for example, from the left side handle to the top handle of button 2. You cannot create constraint for a single control with the side handles of different axes. I hope you understand this particular thing. Anyway, we would be seeing briefly while explaining the demo. Thanks. So let us just check the demo for this particular constraint layout. So what are the controls that are available for this particular constraint layout? Okay, so to use this particular constraint layout, first I need to download the constraint layout and the solver for constraint layout from this particular support repository hierarchy. So this one, constraint layout for Android and the solver for constraint layout. This both thing has to be downloaded and installed. Only then you can use the dependencies for this particular constraint layout. So I have installed this both thing and also I have included the constraint layout dependency thing. Okay, so now let us create a XML file. New layout resource file. Let me name it as layout underscore constraint. So I'm having the root element as linear layout. created the XML file. So now I have to change this particular linear layout to constraint layout. You can either, so to include this particular constraint layout, you can just drag and drop here, or from the component tree you can just like right click, and you do have options named convert linear layout to constraint layout. Just click that, so you would be having a dialog: flatten layout hierarchy, don't flatten layouts, reference from other files. So just click OK. Okay, so that my constraint layout is all set now. So switching to text view, I do have the constraint layout starting tag and the ending tag. Everything whatever the control I'm placing in this particular control will be available between this particular starting tag and ending tag. But I'm not going to touch this text view in this particular constraint layout. Everything whatever I'm designing would be, I would be performing the UI design only in this design view. I'm going to just drag and drop controls, make a responsive UI using this particular design view. Okay, so now let us just check out what are the controls important in this constraint layout editor. So this is my actually the layout editor. So we are going to check out what are the different icons available in this particular layout editor. So some important icons available in the top left corner of the layout editor. So we do have show design, show blueprint, design plus blueprint icon at the top left corner, and the down icons are hide constraints, auto connect icon, clear all constraints icon, infer constraints icon. We are going to check out what are all these 7 icons. On clicking this particular show design icon, I would be able to view only the design of my layout. On clicking this particular show blueprint icon, I would be able to view only the blueprint of my layout. The third icon, when I click that particular, the third icon, I would be able to view my design view plus the blueprint of my layout. So these 4 icons, let me demonstrate all these icons with the control being placed in the layout. Let me switch off this auto connect option. Let me have this hide constraint icon as on in the on state. So let me just keep the button in the layout. So I'm using, so this button needs to be set in the center, and these the red dotted lines you are seeing is the guideline to place the icon. So you can have the guidelines whenever you go nearby the top left corner. So you can see the top layout guide, and this thing is the right layout guide and the top layout guide. When I go down, you can see the bottom layout guide. Okay, so these are some guidelines used to design, align your control. So to place your control, you can use this guidelines. Okay, so now I'm going to set the constraint for this particular button. So I'm just going to drag from the side handle to the top layout guide, and I'm going to drag from the bottom side handle to the bottom layout guide. Okay, so I have set the vertical constraint now. Now I am going to set the horizontal constraint too. So I have to drag from the left side handle to the left side of the layout, and from the right side handle to the right side of the layout. Okay, so now I have designed both the vertical constraints and horizontal constraints. So whenever you place any controls in the layout, you have to make sure that that control is set up with the vertical constraint and as well as the horizontal constraint. So I have this button in the center and my constraints are set both horizontally and vertically. So whenever this particular thing is switched on, I can see the lines surrounding the buttons. So on switching on this particular height constraint icon, I can see all the constraints in the blueprint. Okay, so what if I don't want to see all those this particular lines in my blueprint? So just switch it off. Once you switch it off, you cannot be able to see the constraints that is dragged to different sites. So only when you go around, hover around that particular control, you can check out the constraints that is set for that particular control. So that's the use of this particular show constraints and hide constraints icon. And now we are going to check about the auto connect options that is available here. So this is actually turned on now. I'm going to place a button in this particular layout. So on clicking this, I'm just placing it here. So you can see that the constraints are automatically created. So the horizontal constraint is actually set automatically. So I'm just going to create the vertical constraint. Yes, I have set up that particular vertical constraints. So you can see an arrow mark to the top layout guide. Okay, so I'm going to place some other control. So on placing that particular control too, so my horizontal thing is automatically connected. So doesn't mean that it only performs the horizontal connections. It would be also performing the vertical connection too. So if it is available nearby, so I would be having the vertical constraints too. Okay, so now this thing, this button is having the vertical constraint and the horizontal constraint, and this toggle button is having the horizontal constraint alone. What if I need to start everything from the beginning? So that is without any constraints. So that's so simple. By clicking this particular clear all constraints icon, you can remove all the constraints set to all the controls. So this vertical and horizontal constraints have been removed, and this particular toggle buttons horizontal constraints is also removed. Okay, so now we are going to check about infer constraints. what is infer constraints? So it is somewhat similar to the auto connect options. So now I'm going to click on this particular infer constraints icon. So what happens is I do not have any constraints for this both controls. When I click this particular option, so now my constraints are set for both the controls. So using this particular infer constraints icon, so whatever the controls available in the layout, it constraints are automatically created. So what is the difference between auto connect and the infer constraints? So when I toggle on this particular auto connect and place any items here, so only for that particular control the constraints are created. So that is not in the case of infer constraints. So whatever the controls present inside the layout, everything would be created with the constraint. So that's the difference between auto connect and infer constraints. So once again I'm clearing all the constraints and I'm going to use this particular infer constraints. Doing this, every control has created some infer. Every control has created its own constraints, meaning that each and every control is set with some horizontal constraint or vertical constraint. Now I am going to clear all the constraints again. My auto connect options is turned on now. When I place any other control here, so only for this particular button the constraints are created. So that's the difference between auto connect and infer constraints. Infer constraints icon, whenever it is clicked, it would create the constraints for all the controls available in the layout, but not in the case of auto connect. So auto connect works only whenever a control is placed, dragged and dropped on the layout. Okay. So um, we have actually worked with this particular side handle. So this thing, the round color thing, is your side handle. What if I need to delete a particular constraint alone? So when you hover on to the side handle of any control, you would see a red color marker on that particular side handle. So on clicking that particular side handle, the constraints set for that particular side handle would be deleted. So once again, let me clear this particular constraint for this particular button. So I have clicked that. So on bringing the cursor, mouse cursor to that particular side handle, I am seeing a red marker. So on clicking that, my left side constraint is clear. Let us now check what is the baseline constraint handle and the resize handle. The resize handle is used to change the dimension of the control. So using this you can change the width and height of your particular control. Okay. So the next one would be your baseline constraint handle. So this is actually your baseline constraint handle. So I'm going to align this button and this toggle button in the same baseline. So it should be aligned in the same straight line. So how do I do that? So using this particular baseline control, you can align that particular thing. Okay. So from here, I'm just going to, yes. So I have aligned this button and this toggle button in the same straight line using the baseline constraint. Okay. So to clear that particular baseline constraints, once again, you must just have to hover the mouse cursor to that particular baseline control and click to delete that particular baseline constraint for that particular for the two controls. Okay, so this is all about different types of handles and how we create constraints. Okay. Now we are going to check about the icons next to the infer constraints, that is the default margin, pack, align, and add guidelines. Okay, so first let me demonstrate what is this particular default margin. When you click on this icon, so you see some buttons here. So 0, 8, 16, and 24. So when you select any of this, um, the default margin for the next element, that is from one element to the other element, not the layout. Okay, so the distance between from one element to the next element would be aligned with the size of margin size of 16. So let me demonstrate with from this button to this toggle button. So I am clicking the side handle and dragging a anchor from button to layout, sorry, button to this toggle button. So as you see that I have a constraint created with the margin space of 16. So how do you identify that 16 is allocated to this particular button and toggle button? So it is not visible actually. The 16 number is available in between them. So let us just check that particular size in the size inspector. So when you click this button, you see the size inspector for that particular button. So the left handle is aligned to the margin size of 16 here. So that is not in the case of layout when connecting it to the layout guide, that is to the top layout guide or the bottom layout guide or the left or the right. Now I'm just creating a constraint from the left side handle to the left layout guide. So as you see, so the default for this particular layout guide is 16. So let me delete this again, change it to 8. Let me check now what size is assigned to the layout guide. So as you see, even though I have selected 8 as default margin, that particular the space between the layout guide and the button be marked as 16. Okay, so I have created already the margin size for this particular button and toggle button as 16. Now I have changed it to 8. The size doesn't change now. Only after deleting that particular constraint and reconnecting the button and toggle button brings the 8 as default margin. So this is all about default margin. So and this is applicable to any buttons, any controls. So I'm dragging this from this side handle to the button available below. So that same thing, whatever the default margin is available there, that is assigned to whenever the constraint is created between two elements, not the layout. From the element to the layout is not applicable, but this default margin defines the size between two elements, not the element and layout. So this is all about default margin. Okay. Um, the next one would be pack. So this can be explained in a somewhat bigger screen. Okay. So I'm changing the device to Nexus 10, enlarging it somewhat. Let me rearrange things. Okay. So to explain this path, first I'm going to explain this particular pack horizontally and distribute horizontally. Okay, so I have elements that is improperly aligned in the horizontal positions. Okay, so now this pack horizontally and distribute horizontally is inactive. To make it active, so I must select more than one element. So I'm just clicking shift and selecting all the buttons. So now if you check, so your pack horizontally and distribute horizontally is now active. Okay, so what is pack horizontally? So everything is packed horizontally without a space is called pack horizontally. When I click this button, this all elements would be packed near without any spaces. So I'm going to just click this button. So it is packed horizontally. So this is what we call it as packed horizontally. So what is then distribute horizontally? So distribute horizontally is also like the same thing, but it would create a equal spaces between the buttons available so that the size between the two elements would be same for all the four four buttons. So I'm just selecting the buttons again. I'm just selecting the buttons again. I'm just going to click on distribute horizontally. So when you see now, so the spaces between the two elements any two controls would be of same size when I click on distribute horizontally. So this is the difference between pack horizontally and distribute horizontally. So if you click on pack horizontally now, it would be aligned without no spacing between the controls. Okay, so this is the difference between pack horizontally and distribute horizontally. Okay, so what is the other two thing? So that is the same case in vertical alignment and sorry, not vertical alignment, pack vertically and distribute vertically. So when you have elements, so let me demonstrate this also. When you have elements in the vertical position, so you can select everything. So when you select pack vertically, so everything would be aligned vertically without any spacing. So the main difference would be the empty spaces would be created below, that is after the last control. That is not in the case of distribute. So when you distribute things equally, everything is assigned with the same sizes. So the size between the two elements would be of same sizes. So let us just check that too. So now it is distributed vertically. So the size between this two button and this two button and this two button, the spaces between these all this element would be of same thing. Okay, so now let us check what is expand horizontally and vertical expand vertically. So let me change once again back to the Nexus 10. Let me rearrange things once again. So what is expand horizontally? Expand horizontally is nothing but, so whatever the elements present horizontally, everything would be expanded to allocate the maximum size, and everything would be in equal sizes too. So let me demonstrate this so that you would be having a clear idea on what I am saying. Okay, so now let me just, sorry, now let me click on this particular expand horizontally button. So when I click on this, everything, whatever present horizontally, whatever the elements that are aligned horizontally is expanded to the sizes so that it occupies from the left layout guide to right layout guide. So this is occupying all the spaces available. So this is occupying all the spaces available within the layout. So everything is expanded. There is no space created between the elements, but the element is expanded to the size so that all the elements occupies the layout. So no spaces are left between the elements. So this is what we call it as expand horizontally. So same in the case of expand vertically. So what happens now when I expand this thing vertically? So I'm just clicking it off. So everything is expanded to the size of the layout height. So this is what we call it as expand criteria. So now we are going to check different align choices available in constraint layout. So on clicking this icon, you can see there are various choices for aligning elements. Okay, so at first when you click this icon, all the elements would be in deactivate state. So to make it active, I have to select more than one element. So I'm going to just select all these three buttons. So on clicking shift, I'm selecting the buttons. Now if you click on this align icon, so you can see all the choices are available now. Now we are going to see what is align left edge, align right edge, bottom edge and top edge. Okay, so the first choice would be align left edges. So on what basis the elements are aligned to the left edge? Okay, because of this particular button is available first from the left layout guide. This particular left edge is aligned with the left edge of this particular button. That is, this button, this button's left edge and this button's left edge is aligned to the left edge of this particular button, because from the left layout guide this particular button is available first. So on demonstrating the example you will be more clear. Now I am going to click on the align left edges icon. So on clicking this two button would align to the left edge of this particular button, because this particular button left edge is available first from the left layout guide. Okay, I'm going to select align left edges. So on clicking this, you can see this particular left edge is aligned with the left edge of this button and this button. Okay, so since because this particular button is available first, this two buttons left edges are aligned to the left edge of this particular button. Okay, so same in the case of right edges too. Now if you check which elements right edges available first from the right layout guide, I believe this button, because from the right layout guide you can see the starting of this, that is the right side of this button comes first. So this button and this button's right edge is going to align to the right edge of this particular button. So once again I am going to select the buttons. I am going to click the right align right edges. So on clicking this, yes. So this button's right edge and this button's right edge is aligned to the right edge of this particular button. So this is what align to right edges. Okay, so same with the case of top edges. So from the top layout guide, which element is available first? So this element. So this two button's top edges would be aligned to the top edge of this particular button. So I'm just going to click the all buttons and select top edge. So everything is aligned to the top edge of the first button available. Okay, let me redo operation, undo operation. Okay, now let us go with bottom edges. So from the bottom layout guide, this particular button's bottom is available first. So this button's bottom edge and this bottom edge is going to align to the bottom edge of this particular button. So once again I am selecting all the buttons and selecting align bottom edges. As you see, everything is aligned to the bottom edges. Okay. What are the other two choices? As you see, there are two choices: align horizontally and horizontal centers and align vertical centers. So what is horizontal centers? Which position is considered to be the horizontal center of all the buttons, all the elements? So as you see the top and bottom side handle, that thing is considered to be the horizontal center of that particular element. Same in the case of this button too. Okay, so this is the horizontal center of this particular button. Same in the case of this button too. Now on selecting all the buttons, I am going to just select horizontal center. On clicking that, so you can see this button's horizontal center is in straight line with this button horizontal center, and same in the case of this button too. So this is what we call it as horizontal center alignment. Then what is horizontal vertical center? This side handle. So on clicking this button, you can see the left side handle and right side handle. So this straight line is considered to be the vertical center of this particular element. And same in the case of this element and this element too. So I am going to once again select all the buttons. I am going to select horizontal, sorry, vertical centers. So on selecting that, everything is aligned in the same straight line. As you see, all the side handles, left side handles are in the same straight line. This is what we call it as vertical center alignment. Okay. What is the last icon? Align baseline. So this icon is going to align all the baseline of the elements, whatever selected. As you already know what is the baseline constraint, so you can see the oval shaped thing is the baseline of this particular element, and this is the baseline of this particular button. Same in the case of this button too. So when I select all the buttons and select align baseline, so all the elements baseline are in the same straight line. Okay. So as you see here, so the baseline is aligned in the same straight line. So this is what we call it as align baseline. So now we are going to check what is center horizontally, center vertically, center horizontally in parent and center vertically in parent. Okay, So let me demonstrate these two examples first. Okay. I'm going to place this element somewhere else, and I'm going to select these both choices. So center horizontal in parent. So what is center horizontal is parent? So this layout center horizontal is somewhat here. As you drag the element, you can see the center horizontal position with the red dotted point. So when you click this particular center horizontal in parent, so it is moved to the guideline. So center horizontal guideline position. Okay, so that is the what this particular icon features. So center horizontal in parent. So I'm going to now use the center vertical in parent. So I'm going to just select this particular icon. So in this particular layout, the center vertical position is here. So actually this button is now aligned to the center horizontal and center vertical. Okay. You can check this particular thing by infer constraints. I have deleted the other two buttons. Now I am going to just click infer constraint. So as you see, this is the center horizontal, sorry, center vertical position, and this line denotes the center horizontal position. So if you want to align something uh, center horizontally in parent and center vertically in parent, you can use this icon. So next thing is, so I'm going to clear all the constraints. The next thing is center horizontally and center vertically. Now let me place just one button. I'm going to place a button here. Okay, so I have placed the button here. Now I'm going to align this particular button center vertically between this particular button and the layout. Doesn't mean that it should be in between the layout and the other element. It can be in between the two elements also, two different buttons. Okay, so first let me demonstrate it with the button is available with between the button and the top layout guide. So I'm going to just click it here and select center vertically. So what happens, this particular button is moved to the center vertical position of starting from this button to the layout. So when you click on infer constraints, you can see the size of this particular line, and this particular line has a equal sizes. Okay, so this is what we call it as center horizontally. Doesn't mean that this button should be available only in between this particular button and the layout. It can be in between the other elements too. So I'm just going to use this button. Okay, so the spaces between this toggle button and this button differs from the spaces between this button and this button. As you see, there are only a small space available in between these two buttons, and somewhat larger spaces available between these two buttons, this button and toggle button. Now I am going to center vertically align the particular button. So it is going to be aligned, sorry, it is going to be placed in the center vertical position of this toggle button and this button. Okay, select this button and select center horizontal, sorry, center vertical. So as you see, the sides are equally divided between these two elements. Okay. Doesn't mean that it should be available only between two elements. It can be of two layouts also. Okay. So the next choice is center horizontal. This can be explained better when I switch to an existing device. Okay, let me enlarge the size. Okay, so the spaces between this button and this button is larger than the spaces between this button and this toggle button. I'm going to click this button and select center horizontal. So on clicking this, I have the equal spaces between this button and this button and this button and this toggle button. The spaces between those elements would be of same size. So when I click on infer constraints, so we can actually see the difference here. Okay. So as you see here, you can see the size of 396 in the from this button to this toggle button. The size would be 396 and this button and this button, the size is 396. So equal sizes are used in between the, sorry, equal sizes are used to denote to the next available layout or the element. In this case, we do have two elements and it is assigned to the two elements. Now what happens if I just delete this particular thing? So I have deleted this particular thing. Once again, I am clearing out all the constraints. Okay. So now I am going to align center horizontally between this particular toggle button and this particular layout. I'm just going to click this. I'm just going to click this button and choose center horizontally. What happens is now there are equal spaces from the layout to this button and this button to this particular toggle button. On clicking on infer constraints, you can see that equal spaces are assigned to the nearest element of the layout. Okay, so this is what the center horizontally, center vertically, center horizontally in parent, center vertically in parent. The next one would be your add vertical guideline and add horizontal guideline. So let me switch it back to the Excel file device. I'm just going to delete all those buttons. So what is guideline? So when you place any elements, you can find the guidelines available. So these are some default guidelines already available in the constraint layout. So the bottom is this bottom red line denotes that it is a bottom layout guide, and this is the right layout guide, top layout guide, and left layout guide. Okay. So what if I need to create some user defined guidelines? So you have to use this particular icon to create the guidelines. So I'm going to create a vertical guideline. So I have a arrow mark here and you can see the guideline. So blue dotted guideline. So I can drag it anywhere in the screen to make it available. Okay. So doesn't mean that I can have only one guideline. So that is vertically. I can use more than one guideline too. So these guideline helps us to align things possibly. So the button should be placed in between this particular guideline. So if it is a criteria, then I can use two guidelines. I can add n number of guidelines needed. So I can just drag and have it anywhere else. So same in the case of add horizontal guideline too. So I can drag this particular guideline too. So these are all used for the designing purpose in your constraint layout, and they are actually called as user defined guidelines. If you don't want any guidelines, you can just select the guideline in the component tree and delete it. So this is how we add vertical guideline and horizontal guidelines. Okay, so the last element, layout, in the layout editor is this particular size inspector. So this particular diagram is what we call it as size inspector. So let me demonstrate this example too with the three elements. So I haven't defined any constraints from this to this or this to this. So now I am going to just create constraints for this particular button alone and show what is the size inspector elements for this particular button after creating the constraints. So I'm going to just draw a constraint from the top side handle to the top side handle to the toggle button, and from the bottom side handle to the button, left side handle to the right side handle to the right layout guide, and left constraint, so left side handle to the left layout guide. So basically, so by default the spaces between the margins would be of 8, sorry, would be of 16 in the case of layout. So whenever any element is attached to the layout, the default size would be 16, and you can change this particular default size here. Okay, so you can mark it as 0, 8, 16, 24 or 32. and the default margin size for any two elements would be whatever you have defined here. So the default margin defines what margin size should be allocated in the case of two elements. Between two elements, what would be the default size would be marked over here. So you can check that also in your size inspector. So here you can just check it margin size has been aligned to the this button and this toggle button and this button and this button. Okay. So what is this particular thing? So somewhat it is named as vertical bias and horizontal bias. This vertical bias and horizontal bias is going to allocate some percentage of size between the two elements. So as you see here, so 80% the vertical bias is set to 80%. So you can just see that this size has some 33% and this size has some 77%. So this is what we call it as bias thing. So you can move this to align things wherever you need to keep it. So this is what we call it as vertical bias. So on moving this thing, your element also moves. So 50-50 would be the equal splitter when it is set to 50. Okay. So next thing is, so we would be more rarely using this particular bias thing when aligning elements. Okay. The next one would be your pin tool. So let me clear all the constraints. I'm going to select this button. So the box available here defines the size of this particular button, and you can see some symbols here. So when you hover your mouse over there, you can see the what is the symbol represents to. Now it is referring to wrap content. Okay. Let me again create the constraints to demonstrate this pin tool. Okay. So now the element is wrapped. So whatever the text available here, the content is wrapped. So height and width is aligned to the content available. So that is what we call it as wrap content. Now I am going to just change this particular wrap content to fixed size. So which means that so my symbol now changes to some other thing. So which means on clicking that particular thing, you can just check what are all the options available. So I'm having wrap content and fixed size, and the third one is of any size. Okay, so we have seen what is a wrap content is. So it wraps to the content, the height and width wraps to the content available inside that particular element. So when I change this to the fixed size, so you can see the layout underscore width size to be of 88 dB. So you can change the fixed size here. So I'm marking it as 100 dB. So which means in any screens or any screen size or any resolutions, this particular button appears to be only of 100 dB and its size doesn't changes with respect to the screens you are using. It always remains 100 dB. That's the meaning of this particular fixed. The third choice, I'm going to click this particular symbol again to change it to the third choice, which is any size. So on clicking this, as you see already there is a bias to the left side and the right side. That bias is actually occupied. So leaving no spaces for the bias. So I couldn't change any bias settings when I use the any size option. So only the default sizes within the layout is considered. So already there is 16. So only the default size of 16 is left. All the other sizes are occupied. So that is the meaning of this particular any size. So let me demonstrate using the layout height also. I'm going to change this to any size. So the bias that is already available. So I'm undoing the operation and going to redo it. So this is what we call it as bias, and there is a margin space of 8 in the case of this particular button and this toggle button. Okay, now I'm going to change this particular button's height to any size. So on selecting any size, so what happens is the bias thing is occupied with my button, so that the height of that particular button is maximized and only the margin size is allocated. Okay, so which is in this case 8 within this particular toggle button and this particular button. So this is the difference between all the three options. So when you make it as any size, it expands to the margin size. So if it is a 16 dp margin space, only that space is left unused. All the other spaces are occupied. So that is what we call it as any size. So we have covered up all the layout editor options in this particular constraint layout. So the next one would be a simple demo on creating a layout using constraint layout. So that would be of different video. So I'm signing off. This is Aaron for Tippy and Ricky. Have a nice day. Bye.